as you can see behind me, it's really foggy this morning. And I shouldn't be out. I've got a real bad chest infection. Well, coughing myself to sleep every night as soon as I lie down. Banging headaches and that. But it's foggy. And I wanted to come over where I came last week to Withy Hill in Sutton Coldfield to take some photos of some lone trees, but I think I've peaked a little bit too early. It's just too foggy. You have to virtually be on top of the trees before you can photograph them, where I kind of wanted them in the distance. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to start my little change in my YouTube channel, offering some tips. As I've said before, I'm no expert, and a lot of these tips I give you I don't follow myself every time because I forget, because I'm still learning myself. But if I can share a couple of tips with some of you, and it might be something you haven't heard before, it might be something that's damn obvious, but it might help total beginners. That's basically what I'm trying to do with YouTube, just trying to pass on a little bit of information if I can. If it's some help to someone, then. So I'm going to start with basic tips on landscape photography. As I said, some of these will be really common sense, and you might think that's not a tip, that's just obvious. But to me, learning from not having a camera at all, these were all little things that I kept forgetting every time I went out with my camera. And when I get back and look at the photos, I'd think, oh God, look at that, that's a stupid mistake. Why didn't I concentrate on that? So, tip number one, horizons. The amount of times I first started taking photos and got back home and realised the horizon wasn't straight. Now this isn't a big problem, because you can always straighten the horizon in editing, but at the same time it's frustrating when you think you're taking a good photo, you think you've got everything right, and you go back and you look at your photo and you realise, look, the obvious most simple mistake, my horizon wasn't straight, wasn't level. Now if you're using Lightroom, there's an actual there's a crop tool there, you can kind of level it all up with grids and that. But I found another tip. If you go down towards the bottom, just above the calibration settings in Lightroom, there's an actual box that says vertical. If you click that, that will automatically level your horizon. So that was tip number one. And the sun's starting to come out a bit, so it might burn some of this fog up a bit. So I'm going to go over there for a bit and see if I can get these trees from this direction. Now the sun's kind of trying to burn through a bit before it completely disappears. Well, the sun's coming out now and it's burning the fog up, so I'm having to rush around pretty quick to get what I wanted to get. Some trees over there that I want to get, so I'm going to head that way as fast, pretty quick. Quickly, tip number two, sky. Always pay attention to the sky and where you're pointing the camera. You don't want to be pointing the camera directly into the sunlight if you're not shooting that kind of shot, because it'll just blow out everything else, all the rest of the details on your photo. Always pay attention to the exposure of the sun, of the sky. A lot of the time, especially in the UK, it's either grey or just the sky always seems to get blown out on your photos. So tip number two, pay attention to the exposure on your sky. Maybe bracket photos, which is taking 3 photos, one at the setting you take it at, and you can alter in your camera to take 1 or 2 over that exposure. So you'll have, so the way I bracket my photos is I have 1 photo taken how I want it taken, then it exposes 1, 2 stops over and 2 stops under. Then when you go back to editing, you will always more or less have 1 that was the right exposure, and you can also blend those in Photoshop and in Lightroom to create the right exposure. It mixes them all together so the highlights are kind of counteracted against the low lights, and you can put your photo right that way. So bracketing your photos for the sky is a good option, or generally just keep an eye on your histogram to make sure that you're not blowing out your sky. That's tip number 2. I'm going to rush on because it's getting bluer and bluer over there. Okay, I think I've missed the mist. Spent too long taking photos of cobwebs. Tip number 3, composition. Now this is a tricky one, I find. It's not just about looking at your subject and thinking that's what I want to take the photo, I'll kind of move it around and take the photo that way. That's not what I mean by that. If you can see the trees behind me, for instance. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 trees. There's 6 trees there. Now you could think, oh, I want to take a photo of those 6 trees on their own. Rather than just go ahead and snap that photo of them trees, try and work out the best way of making them trees more interesting. And the simple thing for things like that is just to separate them. See, there's a gap between each one of them trees. Now those trees would look a lot better if they had a gap between each one. It's just simple things like that when I'm talking about composition with regards to look at what you're going to take a photo of, move around it for a little bit, have a look at the best way you can capture that. Because a lot of the time, I mean, walking out with landscape photography, you can be walking somewhere and you can think, well, that looks really, really nice. But if you was to imagine that on a picture, it might look really boring. So you've got to kind of capture the best bits of it and also capture it in a way that shows it the best. So yeah, composition is my number 3 tip. Spend a bit more time with your composition. The way I always do it is I take a photo straight away, and then either way I haven't lost nothing. I've got that photo, whether the conditions change, whether it starts to rain, that ray of sunlight coming through the trees disappears. I've got that initial one shot. Then I try and spend a little bit of time moving around a little bit more, trying to see if I can perfect it, if I can get it a little bit better. Just try and concentrate a bit more on the composition is kind of tip number 3. Okay, I know you can't see me very well, and this goes against tip number 2, was it? That was saying about having the sun in the right place, the sky in the right place, and not having the sky overblown or blown out. But I wanted to show you this composition that I've kind of seen here. I'm coming down a hill, and the camera's probably not level. But as you can see, there's a tractor, and it's parked right by his house. And with the sky being blown out behind him, it will make like a nice silhouette. So going back to my composition tip, think about separating your subject. in your photos. Now, it's not just when you're doing like silhouette photos like this. I'll just move the camera around now so you can see me a bit better. Yeah, think about separating your subject. Now, it's not just when you're doing like silhouette photos or things like that. It's like, so for instance, I'm taking a photo of a spider's web. Now, when somebody looks at that photo, I want them to look at the spider's web first. So try to find a way to kind of isolate the main subject that you're taking the photo of, because that's what you want the viewer's eyes to be drawn to straight away. Yeah, I'm going down a hill. I've missed the mist now. It's kind of gone. But I've got a few shots of the tractor, and he's just popped into his house for a cup of tea by looks, because that's the farmer's house. But I think he's going to be coming down his path now. So I'll move down here and get out of the way a bit. There's a few trees in the field there I want to get a few shots of, and then that's kind of it. Hopefully, if I go down here quick enough, I might get a photo of this tractor coming down with this kind of track behind me. So I'll get a wiggle on to the bottom of this path, just in the hope that he comes down. Well, I'm waiting, listening for the sound of the tractor, and it sounds like it's going in the opposite direction. Oh well, never mind. It was an idea. I hope this is all helping. I'm not very good at it, but it's little tips I've learned, and as you go on and add the camera a bit more, the more photos you take, you more kind of realise that, yeah, I should have isolated that, I should have done a better composition, I should have kept my eye on the light, my horizon should have been straight. They're all kind of like little simple things that I'm kind of telling you at the moment that I've learned through trial and error. But it's getting a bit moody again over there. I might take another couple of shots, a little snap around. Next tip I like to do every now and then, I don't do it all the time, is include a person in your landscape shots, whether it's yourself or someone else. It kind of gives a bit of perspective, a bit of depth, a bit of realism to the shot, to kind of show how big the scene is. I've managed to catch a couple of people walking the dogs today, or running, another guy taking photos, and it kind of adds a little bit to the image rather than just a landscape. I'll drop another couple that I've took in the past that I think the photos wouldn't have worked if I never added the people. So yeah, that's my next tip. Just add a random person every now and then. We call him Random Ronnie in our house. When people say, who's that in the photo? Showing family or relatives and that, who's that? I don't know who that is. And I'm like, yeah, it's Random Ronnie. But on the flip side of that, try not to include what you don't want in the photo, which I find very difficult in the area where I live. You've either got factories behind the back of your shots, or houses in that you don't want when you want like good landscape photography photos of nice shots, and then you'll have like a factory in the background, or some scruffy looking houses or something that you don't want in. Now, yeah, obviously you can get rid of them in editing, but it's always ideal if you can take that shot without that object in to start with. So yeah, there's adding something in a shot to make it better, and also trying to exclude something, which also kind of reverts back to my last tip with regards to isolation and composition. That tractor's over there now, but he's right in the corner and he's not moving. I did want to get some tractor shots, elusive tractor shots that took me 16 months to get, and I've seen about 4 in the last week, 2 weeks. Oh, he's moving, so I'm going to stop this and I'm going to get some tractor shots. Well, I took some. I don't know if they're any good. And on to my final tip, which has just escaped my mind. Story. It's not always possible, but this is always in my mind for every photo I take. Try and let your photo tell a story. Now there's difference between a snapshot you take on your phone or with a camera, like a holiday snapshot of someone just smiling at the camera. It's not really telling a story. A photo that tells a story will always hold someone's interest longer than a random snapshot. Now it's not always possible with every kind of landscape photo you do, because a lot of them can be like vistas or waterfalls and things like that, where it doesn't really tell a story. But if you can kind of keep that in the back of your mind to try and let that image tell a story, it will make a better photo. It's a bit hard to explain. I've took a photo of the tractor. The story is the farmer's ploughing his fields, rather than a stationary tractor with nobody in it. It's just a snapshot of a tractor. You kind of understand what I mean? I'm going to pop into Amsoil now, just at the bridge, just to have a quick look, see if the kingfisher's back or the kestrel that I keep missing. I'm not going to hang about there for long, and that's it. So if I drop some photos now, this is what I took when I was there. If I don't, it was no good. But anyway, thanks for watching. Until next time, hope you've learned something or a little bit from these tips. As I said in the beginning of the video, I'm not professional, I don't claim to be, but if I can impart a little bit of wisdom to some beginners, I'm happy to do so. Until next time, thanks for watching.